Hi, folks. So, welcome to the conversation series. It's conversations with Robert Simpson. That's me, in case you haven't noticed already. So, the whole idea about this is just to have a series of conversations with interesting people about themselves, about their lives, and about things that are sort of interesting in the world at the time. Interesting. I've said that an awful lot. Um, so at the moment, you cannot escape your notice, no matter where you are in the world, that we are dealing with a huge uproar globally following the death of George Floyd in the United States at the hands of the police over there. And it's raised all sorts of questions about racism um, across the planet, generally speaking. And I thought, look, what I wanted to do was to sort of chat to people about this as part of my understanding of what's going on. And I've been following my friend Danielle, and Danielle has been getting involved in the situation out there. She's been at a couple of protests. She has been commenting on her own experiences. And there was a story that she shared on her Facebook again during the last few days about her experiences whenever she was here in Ireland. And there is a narrative that is suggested that over here in Ireland, there's no such thing as racism. And I thought I'd take that as our starting point for a conversation with Danielle. So I'm going to introduce you now to this is Danielle. Hi, Danielle. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm not too bad. It's about 2 o'clock in the afternoon here in Northern Ireland. You're in New Jersey, and it's 9 a.m. Is that right?
Yeah, it's about 9 a.m. So a little early for a Sunday morning, but
For
we're
for a
here.
deep for a deep-heated conversation about very serious issues.
Yeah,
So,
but let's do it. Yeah.
I mean, this is just one of those things. It's not that I intended to have a conversation that was entirely focused on race, that was about these sort of things. But this is a conversation that's been going on for generations. This isn't anything new, and it does feel like it's a very important thing that we do talk about, that we do address. And it's your experiences here that I wanted to start off with. Well, before that, I mean, tell me a bit about yourself. What is it that you do?
Okay. Well, to start, I'm 24. I work in the insurance industry. Um, I also have my bachelor's in global business, which was why I was in Ireland. I was working on a international internship in Belfast 3 years ago. Um, Yeah, and what else interesting about me? I'm Black, right? Um,
I have to say I hadn't noticed that at
no
any
one ever
point.
guesses. Um, I'm also a queer woman. It's Pride Month, give my little rainbow flag. And I also have another perspective is that my father is a retired police officer. So I just have all these different layers of why it's great to be an American, especially. Yeah.
I mean, even that statement. Look, that's something that over here in Europe, and I've only been to the States a couple of times so far. But there is this sort of very deep sense of patriotism and about that nationality, about how important it is of everything else. Is it great to be an American for you?
So I know for me, um, I'm I love being an American, right? I love the culture I have and everything. But I think there's things that America as a country can do that's better. Um, you think about how the world is, right? And how things might be for a Black queer woman in today's society. So it's like, where do I fit in, right? What country would I actually be accepted in?
Mm.
I love international, I love traveling. Whenever I travel to somewhere new, I have to do research on how Black people are treated, how women are treated, how someone in the queer community is treated. So technically, yes, legally, I do have all my rights. I can marry whoever I want. I can practice whatever religion I want. I can be whoever I want, technically. But I think that there is a whole system set up in America which kind of makes things a little bit harder for certain people. Um, even with what's happening right now, um, it's about mostly police brutality. But it's not just the police, it's the whole judicial system. It's the whole system in itself, where it starts from um, lower income areas that are mostly people of color,
Mhm.
a school system that isn't as well funded as somewhere that's in a white area, to the entire legal system of why judges are more likely to send someone of color 25 years in prison for maybe a marijuana charge. Meanwhile, someone that might be their counterpart might just get probation or a slap on the wrist. So it's just so many different layers that have always happened. Um, and I think it could be a little bit more difficult for someone who was born a certain way.
And I mean, I think like part of the thing is being here in Northern Ireland. I mean, you know from having visited, this is an incredibly white country. You know, we are still. I think for a lot of people, their exposure to other cultures is minimal. Aside from seeing stuff on TV and in films, they really just don't have any comprehension about what other nationalities or religions or anything else actually think or feel like. I mean, basically, they're human beings the same as everybody else, but there's this sort of disconnect there. Um, and you know, I think it's important to have those conversations, to be open enough to actually engage with people who actually have those experiences, and to listen to them, and to make sure that the voices, something I keep on reading this week is about amplifying the voices, about making sure that people have that chance to speak. I mean, certainly one of the things that I had observed in my brief visits to my visit to California last year was that a lot of the visible social deprivation, a lot of the faces that you would see in those kind of poorer areas that were on the streets, it did seem to be the Black communities rather than sort of the white community. So I mean, my experience going through is that, you know, all those things are very, very true, that this is very visibly an issue about the social deprivation of those communities.
Yeah, definitely. I remember when I first came to Ireland, it was a couple of classmates and I, and we're all like different body types, different colors, Asian, Black, white, Latin, all mixed. And we were walking down the street to, I believe it was like a market that we were going to. Like you guys have like this huge market in Belfast, like you can just buy things in. And we were walking there, and people were literally sticking their heads out their windows, like gaping at us. And I was like, and they're like, and I'm like, oh, okay, hi. And people always took double looks. I guess, seeing six young adults of different colors isn't very common. Um, but even then, I know me personally, I wasn't raised in a poor area. My parents were, but we kind of they broke out of that once they were adults. They got jobs and you know they were better off. They were able to get out of that specific type of lifestyle. And I was born in a middle class family. So
That must change things for your experience as well. Being, I mean, because you do not fit, I think, most people's idea of the stereotypes. You know, and coming from a sort of the relative affluence of a middle class setup, that must change. I mean, does that change your experiences radically in terms of sort of, you know, your friends and or is it kind of the same prejudices no matter what your class is in the States?
so
It's a big
I know.
question. I know. I don't expect a definite answer on that one.
Well, it's hard to say because, I'm who I am, so I have my specific experiences. I know, for example, when I start speaking to someone, they might be like, "You don't sound Black," or "You sound really smart for a Black person." And, I don't think people do it maliciously. I think that's just how society acceptable racism in society, and people don't even realize it's racism. My entire life I've always heard people say like, well, you sound so smart. Like there's a correlation of sounding a race, not as much as I guess a socioeconomic background. I sound like I'm from central New Jersey in a middle class family. I wasn't raised in a city. I wasn't raised in the South, so I don't have a Southern accent. I think it's just where I'm from that I speak the way I do. And it's kind of insulting, honestly, when people tell me that I don't sound Black, as if, I'm supposed to sound like African American colloquialisms
Mm,
that are seen on TV, such as sounding with speaking with slang, or um, not being able to actually comprehend what people say, And then I'm such an ass sometimes. Like, I'm gonna be honest. So like people be like, "Yo, what's up, my sister?" Like just to piss me off, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't understand your colloquialisms. What are you saying? And they're like, oh, hi, how are you? And it's like, you could have just said that from the beginning. And it's just annoying.
I mean, like part of what I've been trying to do in the conversations I've been having with sort of my largely white circle is to try and put things into terms that they can understand, because I think like this is the biggest problem. They're trying to be empathetic with somebody, and trying to understand why people are so outraged at the moment, and why this is it's spilled over into such a massive global demonstration, finally, or again, but finally, is just that people don't seem to get it, because that color issue just they shut down. Whereas if you start talking about those issues about racial prejudice and those sort of preconceived notions that people have, most people I would think can identify with that at some point. I mean, certainly I've had people who will say to me, "You don't sound like you're from Belfast," or "You don't sound that you're Irish," or whatever else. And I know that some of those people who've said that, because you can see what follows in the conversation, are expecting something else. They're surprised at, again, things like the intelligence and the articulation, because there's a perception for some people of dumb Irish the same way as there's this perception for some people of dumb Black. And I'm not making a direct comparison because they're two different issues, but there is an overlap that I think for some of my country people they might get. They might start to feel like, okay, right, so this is actually a global issue, and this is actually a human issue, and we shouldn't be like that. And I mean, for me, I'm very aware that there has been a stereotype that's been perpetrated, that's been portrayed repeatedly, that suggests that Black people are inferior mentally. That was something the Victorians were keen on pushing. It's something that I would have heard as a kid, and it just doesn't bear any relation to what the world is actually like and what people are actually like. And I mean, I feel such guilt when I hear comments like that, even retrospectively. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I heard that too. Yeah.
yeah.
It's like
I,
a slap in the face, like, oh, my
yeah.
color makes it that, I'm less intelligent, or I have the capability to be a functioning adult in society. Okay.
So on that note, can we talk about your experiences here? Because there was a couple of incidents that you had on your first trip to Belfast. Um, and I think they're really important, because remember when you told me about them at the time, I was pretty horrified at what had been said to you. Um, but there's also a narrative that's been going around that says there's no, that racism in Ireland just doesn't exist, which is really, really false, But I would like, if you're okay with that, I'd like you to share those experiences here.
No, yeah, of course. I'll start with the smaller ones at first. That was just kind of like taken back before I lead to the big one. I was walking down Cathedral Quarter, or I'm working with other Irish people, so we're just hanging out together, walking down this quarter, right? Everyone's drinking, everyone's having a fun time. At this point, I'm kind of used to people taking double takes at me because, I don't, I stand out in the crowd. Um, and there was this homeless man. I specifically remember he was just a beggar. I don't know. And then all of a sudden he sees me. He's like, "Hey, that's a sister. I ain't never seen a sister before." And everyone's quiet. And the girl I'm with from my company, she's like, "You can't say things like that. Like, you can't just say that." And he's like, "Well, I've never seen one. Like, it's a sister." He's like, "Hey, sister." And, like I said, I'm a bit of an ass. So I was like, I'm not like a Catholic or a nun, so it's really hard for me to be a sister. And he just looked at me like I was crazy. And I was like, "Okay, let's go." That was one of the issues I had. Then when I was at a museum, I was like, hey, like I haven't done one of those black cabs. I hear they're really cool. I've never been in one, like those historically black cabs that you guys have in your country. Like, I'm told that they do tours and
Yeah,
everything.
I
I'm
just
like,
on that one, can I just clarify? Because we had a conversation about this yesterday, and I got very confused about this. But black cabs in Northern Ireland, for those who don't know, because I realized this could go out internationally, black cabs are basically it's literally a taxi. They're colored black. It's not cabs that are run by black people, because I thought when you were telling a story the other day, it was a black cab driver, and it wasn't a black cab driver. It was a black cab driver.
yeah.
Sorry, it's just a semantic thing, but I know that some people are going to get lost on this one really quickly.
No, yeah. If you think of like the kind of cabs that you would see, like when you think of London, for example, because you guys are technically part of the UK, so it's like, well, I'm not going to try to get everyone angry in Ireland for saying that, but it's like one of those cabs, and I've never been in one, compared to like a normal looking four-door sedan. And so we were in it, and I'm having a conversation with the guy, and at the time I'm 21. He's like, yeah, so how old are you? And I'm like, oh, I'm 21. He's like, really? I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, I always thought that colored women are supposed to look younger for their ages. And I'm like, oh, do you normally tell people that they look old for their age? He's like, no. I'm like, then why are you doing it to me? And he had nothing to say. Um, And I was like, oh, great. So now I'm getting called colored, and I'm also being told that I look old. So I'm just like, okay, great. I want to get out of this cab, right? And it was just, I never been called colored before. It's such an old term,
Is that
right?
is that a term that's still used in the States?
No. I mean, like people say people of color
Uh-huh.
when you want to like put a blanket statement. But no, usually black is acceptable. Um,
It is a word that, I mean, I'm not excusing it, because I know the terminology has evolved, but it's still a word that I do hear on a fairly regular basis here. I think people
mhm.
still haven't got their heads around. We're like 20, 30 years behind the rest of the world at the best of times. Um, but I think it's a word that they still haven't got in their heads. Is not the word that you use. This is now, it's an offensive term, isn't it?
A bit, I think it was more popular in the 1960s. Like they always had different names for black people. Like it used to be Negro,
Hmm.
and then it was colored, and then it was black African American. So you're a bit like a half a century behind on terminology, I guess.
in
Um,
in so many different ways. I mean, we could talk about all the ways that Northern Ireland is behind everywhere else, but we would be a whole other hour doing that.
oh yeah, that's another conversation. But yeah, it's just I'm black, and even people saying African American, like
Mm,
you can't even say that because you don't know if I'm American, you don't know if I'm African descent.
mm.
There's people from South America or different places that might not be African that are also the same color as me. So, black is acceptable.
Okay.
That's what's in right now.
It's a really, really obvious question to ask in many respects, but actually, I think, like, even for me, I mean, I like to think that I'm reasonably well educated and that I understand and that I listen. But every now and then, partly probably because of the sort of media that I'm interested, because of the research that I do. I mean, I'll flip between something from 2020 and then look at something from 1975 and from the 80s, and the language just changes and evolves, and you see how people respond to different terms at different times, and it can get a little confusing. And again, that's not an excuse; it's just it helps every now and then. I suppose it's not that I'm not asking people to remind me that this is what you use, but it's good to have the conversation. Say, look, this is what you say. You don't say this.
Mhm,
And it's the same with other descriptions of sort of nationalities and ethnic races, that people do use terms that are so outdated, and they don't think it's offensive, but it is. On that note, there was a more serious incident that happened to you while you were in Belfast, and this was the one that I think had me with my jaw on the floor. Um, you okay sharing this one?
yeah, definitely. So I was hanging out with someone in a movie theater. Um, Oh my goodness. It was the cinema on what is it called? What is the movie theater? Oh my
It
gosh.
was the movie house on Dublin Road in
Yes.
Belfast, which is recently closed down, but the chain itself still exists.
Yes, it was right up the street from where I was staying. And I was really excited. I was going to see Wonder Woman with my buddy. This is 3 years ago. And, we sit there. First of all, I'm already like surprised because I get the popcorn and you guys don't put butter on your popcorn. And I was like, there's no butter. They're like, why would we put butter? And that was like a whole other thing, right?
I didn't
So
know this was a thing that you have to put butter on your popcorn.
butter on popcorn,
Okay, I
amazing.
clearly I've yet to do the whole cinema experience in the States properly, so I'll do that next time.
Next time you're here, I'll take you to a movie if it ever opens again. But you know, I was so excited to see this, and we're sitting together. The theater is getting filled, and I think we're more towards the side. So we're like inside a row. So there's the wall blocking us, and then there's an open seat. And this random guy comes and sits next to me, and I hear him mumbling some things. And I'm like, oh my God, this poor guy has Tourette's, like, or something like that. I thought maybe he had some kind of issue because he was just mumbling a bunch of stuff and like looking at me like with disgust. And I'm like, oh my God, why did he want to sit beside me during this movie? Right. And I start hearing the words he's saying, and he's saying the N word. He's keeps saying it. And I'm like, excuse me, like, can I help you with something? And then all of a sudden he just goes off on me, right? The movie's starting, and this guy starts telling me that I should go back to Africa. I'm a dirty N word. I look like I have AIDS. No one wants me here. All this random things. And I can't even leave this situation because I didn't know what else he would have been capable of doing. So I'm like hoping and praying that like someone else will hear, because the person I'm with, I guess he wasn't even really listening to what was happening, but there was people in front and to the side who were hearing this. And I think they went and they got someone from the movie theater, and I was super aware of what was happening. And I was super uncomfortable. I was freaking out. I was texting our group chat with my other American friends. And I didn't know what to do because, like, what if I do try to go by this guy and he tries to hit me or something? And then, I beat him up. Um, then what? I don't know the rules of your country like that. Like, am I gonna be arrested? I know, like, in America, if, a black woman puts their hands on like a white man like that, who are the police going to believe? And I kind of had that same outlook. Like, this tourist American who isn't from here is getting into an altercation with a local. How am I going to be perceived? Is it going to be his word against mine? So I kind of had to bite my tongue at this point, and I believe the movie theater pulled him out and they kicked him out, and it was an amazing experience. No, not like an amazing, great experience, but it was a great experience that the movie theater did something. And I'm so happy that those people in the movie theater actually said something, because it was terrifying to even hear that. Oh, excuse me. And I've never dealt with that before. Like, even in America, um, all my 20 something years living in the United States, no one's ever directly, even to my face, called me that or told me to go back to Africa. I'm like, I'm from New Jersey, United States. Like, so that was crazy for me. And then, I didn't want to like cry in public. And then I get back to the hotel and see all my friends, and I just start sobbing. And yeah, that was not a great experience.
I am so sorry that was your experience, that was something that happened to you, that you've had that now. Like, those few days that you spent in Belfast, there were far too many incidents that happened to you, and it's obscene that is your experience here. And what worries me is that I get upset and I get annoyed whenever I'm aware that this happens to anybody. And the thought that we have so many tourists coming in from all over the world now, into this country. We have massive, our economy depends on it. And we got all these nice visitors who are coming in who then get treated like that. And I'm sure it happens to far more of them than is let on, because the sheer volume that you had alone for one individual, how is that not happening to more of these people on a regular basis? And that's just not acceptable. So for someone to sit around and say to me that there's no racism in Northern Ireland, there is, and it's very, very public. I hear it in lots and lots of really insidious, gentle ways. Gentle as you can be with racism. All these sort of stereotypes, all these kind of thoughts that seem to be based on sitcoms of the 1960s and 70s, where racism is really, really apparent, and where people of color, people of any other nationality or religion are the butt of the joke. And these are real people. People are people, and the sort of language that you would beat somebody up for using about yourself if you were somewhere else, you then feel it's okay to use to somebody who's just coming in here to invest in our people and invest in our economy. And that seems really, it's really shitty. Plus, as a human being, I mean, more important than all, I mean, that's the me rationalizing some of the stuff, but as a human being, nobody should go through that. And it's very clear that thought still upsets you. Um, and we I think sometimes over here in the UK and Ireland, we sort of pride ourselves in being, there's a bit more of that superiority. We kind of think we're a bit better than you guys are in the States, that we're more educated or something, but actually we're not. We're dumb as.
I'm not commenting on that.
No.
I don't know.
But I mean that's my response to something like that. I mean that's an absolutely horrible experience. If you say that's so unique, that is not the way that you find the racism has manifested itself on you in America. And I think maybe in a way some people will be surprised by that those sort of comments aren't more freely passed around out there.
Yeah, I'm from New Jersey. I'm not from the deep south. I'm not from an inner city area or anything like that. I've heard things growing up, people made puns on my last name and, like, for example, called me Danielle Black Shit. Or, I was called a porch monkey in middle school, or, people would comment my hair was nappy. And it's like just those like little things, it's not like the hard N word. But before that was my first experience ever hearing that from someone. Um, and we had at the time, like, Obama was becoming president. I'm from a very conservative area where most people are Republican, was directly called that. I think the first time in America where I was called that was on a cruise ship last year during a party. Um, and I ended up taking my drink and throwing it in the girl's face and grabbing her hair and telling her, like, if you ever say that to me again, I'm going to drag your ass across the dance floor. Like, I'm from Jersey, like, don't mess with me. In, like, the most nicest way possible, because I'm super condescending sometimes. Like, I'll be like, oh yeah, if you ever do that, I'm gonna kick your ass. I didn't. I'm not a violent person. I've never been in a physical altercation, but it felt great to throw my drink on her. She
Mm.
had it coming. But yeah, I think it surprises a lot of people when I say, in America, I've never dealt with that. I dealt with more systematic things. I've been followed in a store. People thought I couldn't afford certain things because I guess how I look.
Mm.
Um, I hold myself to a certain degree, right? I don't go out looking like a bum, or, like, whatever when I go shopping. Like, I can afford things. I work so hard that I can. Um, and then even when I was going away to college, like, I heard comments from people that they were just, I probably only got accepted to my school because they had a quota to fill, right? So it's like, oh, so you think that I'm not smart enough to get into this school, but because they just wanted to have a certain amount of Black people.
Mm.
And I've heard that when I got hired for certain jobs, it's like people just can't be happy for you as being, like, the person that you are, a hard worker or anything. but it must just be because you're Black. Um, so it's just something I've heard over the years, and you kind of just make it into white noise after a certain point, you know?
And yet, you know, these sort of experiences are not unique. This is something that, as you said, it's systematic. It's something that just sort of is there everywhere in society, and this is also sort of, I guess, brought you to sort of attending your first demonstration as well, and in terms of this. So following the George Floyd's death, obviously these demonstrations have gone global now. They're having them in Belfast. They are stirring up other controversy because of the, you know, we're still under lockdown technically here in well, certainly Northern Ireland and across the UK, and obviously you've got vast numbers. Some of the violence has kind of followed them here as well. But there is a reason that people are getting out there and they are demonstrating, and I'm still not sure that most people understand it. But I mean, for you, for someone who is the daughter of a cop or an ex-cop, to go out and sort of join these demonstrations, what does this mean for you? What is it that's driven you to this point where finally, you know, where you feel you have to go out there and join everyone else?
Um, have you seen the George Floyd video?
Um, I've watched some of it. I mean, it's not even just the George Floyd video I've watched. I have now sat over the last couple of weeks and I've watched various other incidents that have happened through the police brutality in recent years. You know, I've read about the stuff about the woman who was shot in her own home. Was it 8 times she was shot? There's been several other instances of people who have had their necks stood on basically, and to the point where they're dead. There was a video I watched the other day of a cop stopping a guy in a car, and he sits there and he calmly tells the officer, he stopped apparently because he fits the description, he's got a broken brake light, and he just tells the cop very calmly that he's licensed to carry a weapon and he has it on him, and he has to tell the cop this, and the next thing the cop just pulls the gun, shoots into him, and that was then broadcast on Facebook. This is not a unique thing, and I mean, for me, my understanding is that because it's not that it's not this these protests are not just about George Floyd. This is about something that has gone on repeatedly. I mean, am I wrong in that supposition?
No. You know, my thing is with these videos, right? You're literally seeing someone's last moments before they die.
Hmm.
And I think people kind of get that disconnect. They just look at it as a video, but you're literally looking at someone be killed on camera. And I think a lot of us started emotionally disconnecting from seeing things like that. And it's just become the regular.
Hmm.
Um, Police brutality has always been a thing, right? If you know about Rodney King and the LA riots back in the 90s, these things have always been happening, right? But it's the fact that now there's social media, there's camera phones, there's video recordings that it goes up instantly. So I think that's why it's becoming a bigger issue now, because people are finally seeing it outside of their bubbles. You know, the Black community has always known what this is like. You know, there's comedy sketches from the 90s, early 2000s about what to do if you get pulled over by the police or whatever. I think Dave Chappelle and Chris Rock did a sketch and it was hilarious. You know, it's like, oh, get a white friend, or like, you know, turn down that music. And it's just like things like that. Sometimes you can laugh at it, but it's an actual problem. It's the fact that now more people are seeing it, which is why it's becoming a bigger issue globally. This didn't just start happening. This isn't something that just started happening the last 10, 20 years. This is something that's been happening for a long time. But when it comes down to it, if someone ends up in court, what's the police going to say? They try to grab a gun. I was worried about my life. You're going to have someone who's respected at a higher level as a police officer saying their word against someone who can't speak for themselves. That is either dead or they might even have a record, because now the police is saying that this person was doing this. It's a word against word kind of ordeal. And who are you going to believe? You're going to believe the police officer whose job is it to upheld the law? Or are you going to agree with someone who they're just an everyday Joe Schmo, that they were arrested, right? So that's
Is
what it
there
comes
then,
down to.
are these then two different issues that are overlapping? Is one about the sort of the systematic, the endemic racism that exists within society and within American society in particular, and then separately the police brutality issue? Is it just is it a case of these two things have come together? Because I know as well that the police brutality is not something that's unique to sort of the black community, although it seems to be more. If you're black and you get arrested, there is a much better chance that you're not going to see the end of that encounter. Um, but I mean, even for me going to the States, I know I'm white, but nonetheless, seeing the cops around the place just terrifies me because the depictions that I'm familiar with of them are not, hey, cops are your best friend. They'll walk you across the street. Everything's going to be fine. And if you've done anything wrong, I promise you know, we're going to look after you. It is a case of like, they've got guns, they will shoot. You know, any excuse, they will shoot.
Yeah, for me personally, my father's a police officer. He's a retired police officer. I'm not. I don't think all cops are bad,
Mm,
right? Yeah, like that's like the thing ACAB that people say all the time. Um, for me, I know that it's specific individuals, but it's not just those individuals, it's the whole system. And I know that there's people who literally risk their lives every day to try to make other people's lives better, right?
mm,
And I know that. But we have to remember that these officers are literally just people. And within any group of people, there's good and bad people. But also, I think the fact that there's this whole systematic racism, it makes it more acceptable to treat a certain type of person a certain way. Um, People's biases get in the way. When you're a police officer, you're supposed to be unbiased. You're supposed to be able to do your job to protect and serve the community. That's what it is to be a police officer. And, I get it. They get a lot of heat. They're risking their lives. I understand that. But, I shouldn't have to be nervous to call 911 if I'm having an issue. When I was getting harassed in a movie theater,
mm.
my first thought is, am I going to be the one that gets in trouble if I end up getting physical with this person? Um, so it's just things like that. Um, I just think there's a lot of changing to do, and it starts from at home, because people aren't born to have these biases, but they're raised to. Society has a way, television, the news. How come when there's sporting events and it's mostly white people rioting in the streets, burning down cars, beating people up because they're excited they won the Super Bowl? Why is that just excited sports fans? But when black people do it because they're angry that they're still being murdered by the people who are supposed to protect us, we're called thugs.
Yeah.
So it's just things like that. Um, and it's infuriating. It's really annoying. Yeah. Whew.
I mean, so so many things now. Obviously, like a large part of this is about creating the awareness, and it's about basically people reaching a breaking point where they have to act, where they have to be seen to do something, where people need a response. I mean, is part of the thing that for you, do you think greater accountability for the police? I mean, if they had to, there's a perception that, you know, if a cop does something, if the cop kills somebody, they're going to get away with it because there's no kind of persecution involved with that. That there's a whitewashing that happens as a result of that. But if they're held more accountable, if they're having to justify the use of their firearms or whatever force that they do, if there's then consequences to that, if you shoot somebody and you kill somebody, and you know they are unarmed, that you then get prosecuted because that is not the appropriate way to escalate that. And also, I mean, I was reading um yesterday about the training that the officers do about escalation of violence, about how they'll spend all these hours training how to be cops, but the number of hours they actually train to de-escalate a situation is literally like just a few of these kind of conversations is in a day you do it and that's it. Whereas surely de-escalation is sort of key, and it's something passive observer, but seeing how Trump has responded to this, you know, when you tear gas a crowd outside your home peaceful protesters, that seems like an escalation, not a de-escalation. And I'm just wondering whether or not that is, these sort of things are the things that will help and will make a difference and will bring an end to whatever's going on right now.
No, yeah. I think the issue is that there's been so many instances where police have murdered or taken advantage or hurt people that it was unwarranted, but they never get punished for it. So why is something going to stop if you're not showing that there's consequences for those actions? Perhaps if police officers are actually treated like they're not better than the law, you're supposed to uphold it, you're part of it, doesn't mean you're better than that. Perhaps, you know, I can't speak for everyone, right? So this is just my perception.
Sure.
You know, perhaps if, okay, you did this, now we're going to actually have an investigation. We're going to be unbiased. We're going to look at the facts and not so much of the races, the ages, whatever. We're going to look at what happened in this situation. You know, after all this rioting, the guy who put his knee on George Floyd's neck finally got second degree. They wanted to charge him for third degree and manslaughter, which, you know, means it was an accident. And the other cops didn't get anything after the rioting. Now they're all being charged, right? Now they're making it different laws put in place where other officers will be required to intervene if they see something like this happening. The fact that he kept his knee on his neck for so long, after 2 minutes, your brain loses oxygen. Why are you on his neck for 8.5, 9.5 minutes? People are literally shouting at you, get off his neck. He called for his dead mother on that footage, saying that he couldn't breathe. So it's just, you know, you look at history. Back in 1968, there was so many riots in the United States for civil rights. After all those riots, civil rights laws were finally passed for Black people. During the Stonewall riots, you know, it wasn't peaceful. Stonewall, for those who don't know, are the gay rights riots that happened in New York City, where the police and the gay community were fighting each other. You know, riots, I don't like them. No one likes to riot. No one wants to burn down anything. No one wants to get hurt, right? Sure, you may have some psychopaths or sociopaths in the mix that do like that, but no one likes that, you know?
Yeah.
But it gets heard. It's louder. You know, when Colin Kaepernick took his knee the past few years in football games, he was told he got blacklisted. He is no longer playing football. People said, we don't want to see this during our sporting events. They just have to go play football. They don't need to bring politics involved. When Black movie stars or people who are winning awards decided to make comments about racism, people are like, I don't want to hear it. You know, I just want to see my award show. And now we're escalating. Things are getting worse. And now people are saying, well, why can't you just be peaceful? Well, we've been peaceful for how long now? And what's changed? More people are getting murdered. More people are not even considering what's happening. No one's listening. But a Target gets burnt down. Now everyone's up in arms about what's happening. You know, why are people more angry about property being destroyed over someone's life being taken? Why is that more acceptable compared to life? Property can be replaced. It's insurance. That's what insurance is for. But people's lives and well-beings, you took someone's father, you took someone's son, you took someone's mother, child. Someone is something to someone, right? But you're more concerned about a store being burnt down, a multi-billion-dollar company store. And on my personal Facebook, you know, I have a lot of friends with different backgrounds and views. So I'm seeing the views of those who are like, well, they shouldn't be rioting. They shouldn't be doing those things. Yet I see you commenting on that, but you haven't said a damn thing about someone being murdered on camera by someone who is supposed to uphold the law. So it's just where people's anger still is. Um, I'm sad that there's rioting happening, but I understand it. I'm angry that it has gotten to this point to need rioting to happen. But unfortunately, that's where we are in the world, and it's going global.
I'm I've been trying to educate myself on some of this stuff as well, and one of the things that struck me was I was looking at sort of the protests in the 1940s following the lynchings that were happening, and the work of someone like Paul Robeson, who I'm sort of fascinated by anyway as a figure, because of his social work here in the UK and in Ireland and things as well. But you know, he's literally campaigning in 1946 to introduce legislation about the lynchings, to sort of protest what's happening to the Black community. Legislation that in 2020 still hasn't passed the Senate. Like, this is not, I mean, I can understand for me. I mean, you know, I'm not doing this as a journalist, but so I mean, I don't have to sit here in objectivity. You know, and I'm sitting here looking and saying, well, this is over 70 years later, and we still haven't dealt with this issue. It is no wonder that people are getting annoyed, and you know, well, some people are focusing on the rioting and the protests that happened in the 1960s. This is happening in the 40s. This is happening in the 20s. This is happening for generations and generations. You know, this has been happening before people got taken into slavery, which is also the reality. There was a great comment that I read possibly just this morning about how America is basically a country that is stolen land built by people who were stolen from other countries. I mean, this is, you know, it is a really warped sort of sense of society. And then for them to get annoyed about the protests and the riots and the rights of the individual to stand up and say, I need to be heard and something needs to change and this isn't right. And I don't know. I mean, I don't have answers apart, you know, I have feelings. Same way, I mean, you know, none of us have necessarily answers to the whole thing. And like, you know, it's not my place to say, I suppose. But I mean, for me, I feel frustrated and annoyed and outraged and confused as to why this is still going on. So to be somebody who's living in that, who's seeing it happening to them, who's treated the way that, you know, has had the experiences that you've talked about, I can't even imagine how one would sit and be quiet.
And there's no reason to be quiet.
No. Um, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, and I really do appreciate you sort of sharing your thoughts and your experiences. And I know like some of those things are not pleasant. What do you hope is going to come from what's happening right now for you personally?
I hope there's more accountability. You know, I know that there's good, there's bad people. I just hope that people are able to open their eyes more and see what's happening. I actually recently had someone from my old hometown tell me that there's no racism in New Jersey and that, you know, compared to how blacks were treated in the 1960s, uh, things are a lot better. Yeah, sure, I'm not being attacked by a German Shepherd and by the police. Or, yeah, I guess I can marry whoever I want and I can use the same bathroom as you. But am I supposed to keep my wants of equality based at a minimum? That I want the same respect as someone who's opposite of me, as a white man? Is it the fact that I should just be okay with being almost kind of equal? No, I want to be 100% equal. I know my worth. I know who I am as a person. If someone has the same education background as me, the same type of upbringing, why are they looked at as a better human than I am? If we're equal in everything else, but how we look. Um, I hope there's more accountability in the system. I hope more people are able to have this conversation and stop dismissing that there is racism because it is there. It is systematic. It might be those words that you think that don't mean anything. It might be those jokes. It might be those things when, you know, your parents say, yeah, I don't feel comfortable with you dating a black person. I've dealt with that my entire life. I've always been an interracial relationship. Mine have ended multiple times because of difference of religion and race. Um, what might be more relatable in Northern Ireland is you guys have the Protestant Catholic thing. Um, it's still all a branch of Christianity. I'm not trying to get any of the Irish upset, but you guys aren't that different. The upbringings are different, the views are different, sure, but you're all still people. You're all still Irish, right? So I'm not going to touch that. I'm not going to
No, no,
touch
no.
it.
But
I'm
I
giving
think,
you an example. It might be more relatable.
yeah, I think, I don't want to take away from you having the last word on this. But I guess it is, I mean, you said it yourself already. It's about equality. You know, it may have improved from how it was in 1968, but it's still not equal. And until it gets that equal point, until we're all treated exactly the same, that battle has to continue.
Mhm.
Danielle, I want to give you the last word, the absolute last word on this, because I think that's the only right thing to do. So, do you have any last messages or comments before we wrap this up?
Let's just do better as a world, as a society. Let's just try to shoot to do better. Let's just work on it.
Sounds
We're
good
doing
to
we're at C grade right now. Let's become an A plus.
B plus within our lifetimes, A grade for our kids. Is that it?
Exactly. Let's keep doing better. Let's work
Okay.
to a better future.
Thank you very much, Danielle. Okay, folks, look, hopefully you've enjoyed that conversation today. I haven't been following whether or not anyone's been commenting on Facebook where we've been broadcasting this live. If you do have comments to make, by all means, stick them in, get involved in the conversation. Please share this with people you think might be interested, that might find it useful. That's the whole point of having these conversations, is to sort of share, exchange ideas, exchange viewpoints, and to let other people get involved in the conversation as well. And as Danielle says, we all need to do a lot better on this issue. Just because you live in a different country doesn't mean that this stuff does not apply to you. In the meantime, look, I'm going to be doing more of these conversations. You'll find them live streaming where possible over on Facebook, and then I'll try and post them up onto the Facebook and the YouTube. If you want to interact with me generally, you'll find me at Avalard, Avalard, over on Twitter, and I'm Robert JE Simpson here on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And I'm not going to ask Danielle to share her social media because I don't want her getting inundated with more horrible people from Northern Ireland who want to just reiterate those horrible comments that were made. And but yeah, if she's happy to share stuff, we'll post tags and stuff in the video below. Okay, I think that's the best way to do it. Yeah.
All right, let's do
Super.
it.
So Danielle, thank you very much. Well, I'm going to end the live broadcast now. So folks, for those of you who have been joining in, thank you very much. And we'll talk to you again very, very soon.